Hello and welcome to Worth the War. My name is Kimmy. We're here to help prepare you to love well and to avoid abuse. Today's topic is a huge one: how to prevent narcissism in our children. I'm going to keep my promise to be content driven, so the only thing I'm going to ask of you is please press the subscribe button if you believe we can do a better job with love and relationship than we're doing in our culture today. Let's get right into the subject. We're finishing up a series that we've called A Practical Approach to Narcissism. It's a series that has basically given us action-packed ideas of ways we can stop feeding narcissism in our cultures. But what more important place can we do that than in our own homes when we're raising children? So let's talk about some practical ways that we can avoid feeding into this narcissistic ideal in our own children. Experts may disagree as to whether we're actually creating more NPD or Narcissistic Personality Disordered individuals, but hardly anybody is disagreeing that our culture itself is becoming more narcissistic. How can we, as parents and as people who are supporting parents, help prevent the spread of narcissism into the next generation? The research is becoming more clear, and I'll put some sources down below in the notes. But we are seeing that narcissism is getting its roots in insecure attachment. There are different ideas as to exactly what all the things are that could cause this, but we do know that abuse is a big factor. It could be emotional or sexual. It could be physical abuse. It could be just within the home where the child doesn't feel safe. For some reason, they're not connecting to an adult caregiver, to a parent, to a guardian, to someone that can keep them safe. There are theories that it could also be created within a child if they're overly spoiled or given a golden child syndrome, that essentially they don't feel loved and safe and protected for who they authentically are. For starters, let's dig into some ways that we can avoid creating this dynamic in our children so that we can practically know that we're not feeding narcissism in our own homes. It's important to note that when you look at what people describe narcissists as in social media, you'll often see that they're described as these people with masks. They're soulless, soul predators with masks that pretend to be human. But if we take that analogy and we take off that first mask where you have this person that's actually just using you to survive, you still have another mask to take off. And when you get to the very root of the person, what you actually have is a wounded child. It's also really important for us to understand this idea of the false self as being a bargain that the real self makes for protection. Dr. Sam Vaknin, who is also here on YouTube, who is both a narcissist and an academic in the field, does a great job of explaining that the real self, essentially in the need for security, bargains away or sacrifices itself so that it can have this false self to come over and protect them. This false self is grandiose. It believes that nothing will ever harm them. It is this protector, and it gives a sense of power that reality just doesn't offer the child. If we talk about secure attachment, if we talk about giving children choices and helping them to grow up emotionally and mentally healthy, we cannot forget that this idea of a false self actually is an effective way for them to protect themselves. So in very abbreviated terms, we've talked about how this lowest level of the mask, when it's lifted off, is actually a wounded child, and that narcissism in itself is an extremely effective adaptation to protect that child from the things that they could not control. If we understand that, we also need to move on to understand that that false self is a bottomless pit of need, and it will need to idealize and degrade and use and abuse every person in its path over and over again, and it will never be satiated. We do not want that kind of future for our child or the people that would encounter our child. So let's get into some really practical ways that we can prevent this in the next generations. Number one, love your child authentically. Love them for who they are. Make it very clear that when your child drops the ball, doesn't do things right, doesn't look right, that does not affect the kind of love that you give them. Number two, don't give your child a false sense of self-esteem. Don't give them credit for things they didn't do. Don't give them too much credit for things that were very easy for them. Make the work the most important part. Let them be proud of who they are and give them indicators that they're on the right path. Number three, be a consistent boundary setter. Have your children understand what the rules are so they don't get tripped up making mistakes when they don't even know what they are. Be a good guider. Let them know what is good and what you expect, but do it in a warm and gracious and patient way. Number four, don't protect your child from consequences. The mistakes we make as children have children-sized price tags, but if we protect them from them and don't let them learn, and then we release them into a world that they're bound to make mistakes like all of us do, those price tags when they're older are much bigger. So let them learn while they're young. The fifth one is huge. It's about loving your child's authentic self and to be very careful not to praise their externals over their internals. When we try to put this into action, we have to remember that the externals that we see in our children, whether it's the way that they look, or their sporting abilities, or their academic abilities, or how much money they can make at their jobs. These kinds of things are external. They're not unimportant, but we want to make sure not to give them praise over the things that really are important. How do they treat people around them that they can get no success from? What kind of character do they have when no one is looking? How kind are they to people that are in their path? These kinds of things are internal. And do we give them support for those? Do we give them an opportunity to work through the things that are difficult for them emotionally and actually come alongside, help them process feelings, anger, frustration, fear? If we want to have healthy kids who understand what really matters in life, we better not be praising all the things that are on the outside. Number 6 complements the last one perfectly. The idea here is that we need to know our child's real self. We need to be good listeners. We need to know what drives them, what excites them, what thrills them. And that becomes important because everything that comes out of their mouth shouldn't be something that we're trying to mold them. And this was a hard one for me. I used to think that our job was to mold our children's view of the world. And as I look back and I think about what makes a child feel loved, it's that we accept how they see the world, allow them to be different, allow them to have their own views, learn how to love their real self so they don't have to hide behind anything else. Another way that we can create a narcissistic influence for our children is this idea of a golden child or a favorite child in the family. This idea isn't just toxic to the siblings of this child, but the one who was lifted up, basically made an idol. They're told they're destined for greatness, they're puffed up, and deep down within that child is an idea that they are separate from the idol. It creates a division within them, who they are seen to be, who they actually are, and it can create an acting out. So we want to be careful not to play favorites in our families, to create visions of grandeur for one child or even for any of our children. Let our children be who they are and use their gifts for who they are, and trust that that will create a whole person. The 8th one, it goes along with the last one. Essentially, we don't want to overvalue, give our kids too many fantasies about who they are, where they're going. We also don't want to undershoot it. We don't want to make them feel silly for being excited for an age-appropriate accomplishment. If they're 4 and they're learning to ride a bike, celebrate that. Not overly celebrate it, but celebrate it. So give them a sense of whatever they do, if they do it with their whole heart, that we're going to be there and we're going to be proud of them. So I hope you kind of see the pattern that's developing here. The idea is to love your child for who they are, not who we want them to be. It's not to control them or press them or take away their choices, but rather to give them the freedom to express themselves while they're being guided, while they're being loved. It's also our ability to ensure in them that they see that we love them even with the mistakes. There's no need for them to be something they're not for us to love them. And if you are co-parenting with a narcissistic spouse or ex or someone who is abusive emotionally or physically, I want you to take good comfort in the fact that research shows that one parent is able to provide a safe place for their child where they can grow and be safe emotionally and become fully mentally healthy, functioning adults. So take some comfort in that. I hope that these tips will help you to think about your parenting in a way that does not feed narcissism. It should give you a sense of comfort that you will have a child who is ready to meet the adult world in one solid self, and that you will be able to enjoy watching them take off and grow. Thank you so much for being here. I hope you find some of this content helpful, that you'll share it, that you'll join us on this journey. Have a great rest of your day.